Hello, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Raymond Nicolet Trust Podcast. My name is Gavrilo Nikolic, and every month I bring you inspiring conversations about the future of education, science, and philanthropy from world top academics, scientists, Nobel Prize winners, and philanthropists. My guest today is Mirjana Mitrovic. Mirjana is an English language professor by vocation, but has, in the meantime, changed her vocation to become a dedicated writer. Before becoming the full-time writer, Milena worked as a journalist. Milena published her first novel, Self-Portrait, with Milena, about the life and work of Serbian artist Milena Pavlovic Barili. Milena published her first collection of stories, The Sacred Herd, in 1999. She also received the Branko Ćopić Award for her third book, Emilia Leta. Mirjana is also at the moment the vice president of the Serbian Literary Society. If you're curious to learn more about Mirjana and her work, you need to listen to this episode. In just a moment, the one and only Mirjana Mitrovic. Mirjana, welcome to the RNT podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. Hello.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to join and discuss about your literary work with me and to enlighten our audience about your literary work and in general where literature and especially fiction is going these days. But before we get into those discussions, maybe ask you just to break the ice, where are you currently and what are you doing as we speak?
I'm at home at the moment. I'm a freelance journalist still, but it's much easier than it was when I did it professionally. And I'm I'm doing on a new book, but it's a long and slow process.
Of course, we look forward to discussions about your next book projects in a bit. But before that, let us start with a question on what prompted you to start writing and how actually self-portrait with Milena came into life.
Yes, it's always difficult to understand, and I ask myself every year, once or twice, why on earth I do what I do. But it's something I felt, first of all, that I can do that. When I started writing as a child, people said, "Oh, it's lovely, you did it well." And then after that, there are always some stories in my head. And so the time came when I wanted to write them down. And so my first novel, Self-Portrait with Milena, now when I look at it, I see it as a bravery of a young age. Because I started writing a novel about a person I admired very much. It's a painter who lived only 36 years, and her mother was from my birthplace, and her father was Italian. And she was a kind of a prodigy because her talent was noticed very early, and her mother did everything to educate her. So she traveled a lot. She had her first exhibition in London, and she was a kind of surrealist painter. And I grew up watching her paintings in her gallery. In her mother established that gallery. So I felt that I have to write about her world from my point of view. That's why it's self-portrait. It's a kind of a biography, but also a kind of self-portrait, a young woman who wants to become an artist. So now I think it's rather difficult because these are very difficult topics, have that mixed origin, Serbian and Italian, living in many cultures, trying to, it's the first half of the 20th century, still patriarchal uh, um, surroundings and societies, both Serbian and Italian. And she did it. So I admired her, and I wrote that book about her. And now I'm proud of that book because, but now with that experience, I doubt I would do it again.
Of
That's
course,
about
it's always
my,
like that. You always reflect and say how I managed to do it. But I think it's a really interesting topic. In general, I know a really limited amount of information about Milena Pavlovic Barili, although she's one of the most famous Serbian artists slash painters. But maybe by reading your book in the future, I'll definitely get more information about her. The only other comment I wanted to make on that is something that's quite relevant, and that is that actually she was ahead of the time, ahead of the curve, in a sense that she was questioning stuff about belonging to different nationalities and different cultures and
yeah.
integration in different cultures. This is something that's quite topical, or has been topical for the last 7 years since the last migration crisis impacted the entire European continent.
Yes, and that's why every 4 or 5 years there is always some publisher who wants to reprint that book, and it lasts for 30 years, which is why I'm proud of it.
We had also some other writers on the podcast, but never a writer who focused on on writing short stories. So my tongue is going going ahead before my brain. Speaking about that, I just want to ask you why you decided to also, I will not say shift your literary work, but shift a bit to focus also on short stories because you publish short stories as well.
Yes, my second book was a collection of short stories. I don't know, maybe it's also the result of youth naivety. I wanted to write that, so I did it. I didn't think about reception, about market, about critics, and um, uh, um, that's what the way I wanted to tell my stories about different people, about this duality I felt in myself and in people around me, so that holiness and that other side of human nature. Um, and speaking about short stories, um, I'm very sad because they are very underestimated in our culture. And I suppose it's also in European countries that people prefer novels, not short stories. But it's a pity because in Serbia, the prize for the collection of short stories has the name of our one and only Nobel Prize winner, Ivo Andrić. But nevertheless, it's not the prize most present in the press, for example, in media. Um, it is very difficult to even to publish a book of short stories in Serbia nowadays, which I'm very sorry. And everybody says people do not have enough time to read long books. They want shorter pieces they can read when they have time. But the situation is, I can't really understand why is it so. But
Indeed, fully agree
I
with you. We're
mm,
coming out of heritage that you mentioned of Ivo Andrić, who himself started writing short stories and then
yes.
wrote a decent amount of novels. That one of them obviously got a Nobel Prize, and the
Mm.
rest were also received different literary prizes. But that's quite interesting. That actually the level of short stories, at least the attraction by the public and also by media, is going down or has been going down for the past 60 years.
Mhm. Mhm. That's it. That's it.
Mirjana, let's turn a bit to your switch of careers, if we call them, although you're still a freelance journalist, but
Mm.
your focus is more and more on writing novels and short stories. When did you decide to actually make a break with the past, if I could call it that way, and to entirely focus on writing, whether be it as a freelance journalist or be it as a full-blown writer?
Well, I don't know. It depends on. These are decisions which were uh, um, caused by the social situation and my personal situation. I spent some years at the beginning of my career working as an English teacher, and I like it very much. I liked working with the children and the teenagers. But then I had an opportunity, of course, and at that time I published my first novel. So I worked. I was younger, and so it was. I know. I thought I could do that. But then I had opportunity. I found at that time more exciting, more more exciting. First of all, to become a journalist, and I worked as a journalist for 20 years, nearly 20 years, which of course was exciting, and I met many interesting people, and I had luck to not to deal with politics and or economy, or but I had the opportunity to make interviews with the most educated, most interesting intellectuals uh, of the time, and it was a real experience for me. But of course, that profession has its other side, you know, and the story of free thinking in journalism became an ideal, but it was difficult to be a free thinker and to write freely what you really have to say. So um, the time passed, and my family obligations were not so strong and difficult as they had been before. So I thought the time came that I can be free, and I like that freedom. I work a lot even nowadays, you know, because it is difficult in Serbia to live only of your writing literary books. But and I don't expect it. Not very many writers in Serbia expect it, but it's much more comfortable to live like that, to be your own employer.
I definitely agree, and obviously, when it comes to making a living out of writing, it's something that's difficult worldwide, not only in Serbia.
Yeah.
But speaking about your writing, the thing I wanted to discuss with you is something quite interesting. It is the style of writing when you write short stories and novels. How it was difficult for you, or was it difficult at all for you to switch from writing novels to short stories? Because obviously they require different focus, potentially in different techniques, and also they consume more or less
Mhm.
a different time schedule.
Yes. Uh, uh, um, it's only well, if you want to make a good book of short stories, it's easier in a way. Um, when you write one, two, three, four, five short stories, but then and you can publish them in magazines. There are places, but then there's the moment you want to make a book of it, and the collection of short stories is not just the collection. Put everything you have. It's also a book which should be um, one title, one idea, and it can be much more difficult to prepare, to finish, to circle a book of short stories than a novel, because in a novel you have a plot, some kind of plot, and so you have all these characters, details, which go with you everywhere, but you have that structure at the beginning. Maybe you don't know exactly what's the outcome of what is going on in that novel, but it is one structure. In the collection of short stories, you must have a structure, but you fill it with different stories and characters if you want a good book of short stories. So I think that's the different. In a way, it's more difficult to write a novel because you have to choose. You have to choose one story, and it's a kind of gambling. You never know, is it a good story for you and for readers. In a collection of short stories, you have the first half is easier, the second half is much more difficult. That's my experience.
Speaking about that experience and speaking about the fact that you're also in, let's say, book writing business, if I could call it that way, when you look at the current trends, did you or can you spot at least some trends when it comes to fiction and storytelling? What trends do you observe emerging? And in context of that, obviously, what are your next writing plans?
Yeah. Um, well, I thought a lot when my writing is at stake, and I decided to stay where I were, not to change, not to adapt a lot. In a way, I usually take some characters or events from the history, which are similar to our time and to my own experience, and then I examine the topic through it. So um, I think I'm not sure, but I think I want write novels, stories about which with setting and plot in my own time. But this is the trend. Maybe we live in a time of realities, and younger writers usually take their own experiences, and they declare that books are written by their own experiences. And we have that as a trend, I think, in European literature, Scandinavians mostly writing, Knausgård and the other similar writers writing about your everyday experiences, uh, um, which is, and writing in detail about them, which I don't think is, which is not my cup of tea, what English people say, but I respect it because, it's very interesting to read. And I think young people in Serbia, younger writers, do the same. Uh, but the difference is that many of them have some very unpleasant experiences remembering the war, which is not far away in the past, which is in our experiences or experience of their parents. And so that's something which is, I think, one of characteristics of of contemporary writing in Serbia.
That's a
That
really nice segue into the question about your next book project. If you could reveal a bit what it is about and when do you expect it will see the light of the day?
not very soon. Uh, you know, when you finish, when you write a novel, when I write a novel, at the beginning, I'm very happy, and I'm optimistic, and I write a lot. I write quickly, uh, and then there's a moment when I understand that my joy is not the the aim, and that's the joy I had. It was enough. Now, if I want other people to feel, to understand, to catch my idea, then I must communicate. And in any communication, you need rules, you need some structures, you need some adaptations. And then that's hard work. Then the hard work starts. Of course, there's a joy after that when I got get some idea how to connect to things, what to do with some characters, and so on. But now I'm in the middle. The joy finished, so I need a lot of hard work. I usually write mainly, not all, but mainly my books have female main characters. Not because I'm a feminist, but because I that's something I know. I understand better. Of course, I have many male characters in my novels. Novel is that kind of structure, but and this manuscript. It's not a novel yet. Is about the first American woman of English origin who married one Serbian young man and came to live in Belgrade. So she was the first, and it was the 19th century. So when I read it, I was delighted with the idea to see our piece of world from somebody else's eyes. And she was very educated, a woman. She translated Goethe and very spoke many languages, worked very uh, um, fought for the rights of women, wrote for newspapers in America, and so on. Very interesting woman. And that's why it's rather difficult, in fact, to write, to structure the book about her.
Very interesting. I hope it will soon see the light of the day. Let's do not say more about the potential timeline, but I think it's a great sneak peek into what is coming from your end towards the readers in the foreseeable future. Speaking about readers, speaking about writers as well, you mentioned that you're vice president of Serbian Literary Society. Can you tell us a little bit more about this organization and your role in it?
Yes. I'm very proud of that position, but it's because we have that writers society for 20 years. It's anniversary this year. Um, in fact, we had some problems during lockdowns and because of coronavirus and everything. Many our activities stopped, but now we are we're trying to push these activities again. We have a tradition of weekly meetings presenting some new book of some of our members, then talking about some important topics, anniversaries of some writers of some important books, for example, and then discussing about the impact of some book after 100 years, for example, after a century, or so on. And that's mainly what um, meaning importance for literature, but for it's also very important organization because the social position of writers is mainly very bad, and we must be sincere about that. If we exclude some very popular and famous writers, 5 or 10 of them, all others have many problems. So this organization takes care about health insurance, about some we negotiate with the state or with the city of Belgrade, with authorities to help in such topics, with such problems. These are main lines of our work, and we will next week we'll have an assembly. We'll will elect new leadership, as I can say, for our organization. So I'm glad that I want to be. Maybe I will be active, of course, but I need some new and younger colleagues. I would like to see them at the head of our society.
That's a great segue into one of the last questions. This is about future and where do you see yourself in 10 years?
10 years. Well, when I was, I told when I was younger, when I was very, very young, um, I was a fiery temperament, but now I'm not. So I would like to finish my book, to publish it. I would like to reach my pension, to be peaceful about my existence, which is not something people usually like. But I'm really looking forward to my pension. Um, then I would be able to do what I enjoy and to live in peace, which is difficult, and I'm afraid it's too much to ask for in the world we live in. But that's what I wish.
Maybe one last question to close us off. If you would have to choose, what is the one thing, only one thing that you like about your writing line of work?
To get or I got?
That you already have. So if
Mhm.
somebody would ask you to select only one thing that is the most important when it comes to your writing line of work, what would you say?
I don't know. Tell good stories. Stories about people, about meetings. I think a meeting of two people, a clash, or when they recognize each other in any way, becoming friends or enemies or everything. But meetings, that's what I find exciting to explore and to write about.
Emilia, any last words, anything that we forgot to mention?
Well, yeah, when I write about when I speak about my books, I can speak for a long time, and sometimes they tell me, "Don't do that. Don't retell your stories." But I cannot. I have that urge to tell people why it was interesting for me, hoping that it would be interesting for them.
Yeah, thank you very much for being my guest on RNT podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.